At a pizzeria, the owner watches his life's work crumble. Bad reviews, lost money, and customers slowly disappearing. To get to the truth, he disguises himself and steps inside as an ordinary customer. He uncovers something far worse. Employees skimming cash, deliberately sabotaging the food. And a former manager with a grudge who has joined forces with a ruthless corporation determined to destroy his restaurant. As he listens to them laugh about his downfall, one thing becomes clear: they think he's already lost. What they don't know is that he's been playing the long game, and now, it's his turn to strike. The scent of freshly baked pizza had always been Deshaun Carter's favorite part of the morning. It was the smell of tradition, of family, of a dream built from nothing. For 20 years, that scent had greeted him at Carter's Original Pizza, filling the small Chicago restaurant with warmth and the promise of something familiar, something real. But today, as he stood across the street, hands buried deep in the pockets of his oversized hoodie, that scent twisted his stomach into knots. He adjusted the faded white Sox cap on his head, a strategic choice. His employees knew he was a die-hard Cubs fan, and this disguise was his first layer of invisibility. His usual crisp button-down and pressed slacks had been swapped for loose jeans and scuffed sneakers, making him look like just another middle-aged man trying too hard to look young. He took a breath, steadying himself. "You got this, D," he muttered under his breath before stepping off the curb. The lunch rush was still an hour away, and through the large front windows, Deshaun could see his staff moving about with a casualness that made his jaw tighten. Something was wrong. It wasn't just the numbers, though those had been bad enough. In the past 3 months, revenue had plummeted by 45%. But worse than that, worse than the financial hit, were the signs no spreadsheet could quantify. Customers who had been part of the Carter's family for years had stopped showing up. Mrs. Romano, who had come in every Tuesday for a vegetarian supreme since Deshaun's father ran the place, hadn't walked through those doors in weeks. The Rodriguez family, who had celebrated every birthday with a Carter's deep dish, had canceled their standing reservation last month. The Southside High basketball team, who used to pack the booths after every game, now ordered from Pizza Hut. That last one had stung. Deshaun had tried to ignore it at first. Businesses had slow periods. Inflation was rising. The economy was tough. But then came the one-star reviews. Pizza was cold in the middle. Found a hair in my food. Manager didn't even care. Used to love this place. What happened? He knew for a fact his kitchen staff wore hairnets religiously. The dough was proofed for exactly 72 hours, just as his grandfather had done. His cheese blend was custom ordered from a small dairy in Wisconsin, and the sauce his family's legacy was something he made himself every morning. And yet, here he was, watching a place that was supposed to be his legacy turn into a joke. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through the latest reviews, his stomach tightening. A young couple exited the restaurant, their voices carrying across the sidewalk. "That was awful," the woman muttered. "I told you we should have gone to Giovanni's," her boyfriend replied. Deshaun clenched his jaw and shoved his phone back into his pocket. Enough. The bell above the door chimed as he stepped inside. He had to resist the instinct to reach up and fix the slight squeak in its ring. Instead, he shuffled toward the counter, keeping his head down. "Welcome to Carter's," the cashier mumbled, eyes glued to his phone. Jason. Deshaun had hired him 2 months ago. He had felt off from the start, but his references had checked out. "Yeah, let me get a slice of pepperoni and a Coke," Deshaun said, pitching his voice slightly higher, adding a tremor to it. Jason barely glanced up. "That'll be $7.50. Deshaun pulled out a crumpled bill, watching carefully as Jason didn't enter the order into the POS system. Instead, he scribbled something onto a cheap notepad, then turned toward the kitchen. "1 pep slice." Deshaun took the flimsy, off-brand receipt paper and pocketed it, his mind whirred. He moved toward a booth by the window, settling into the worn leather seat. The restaurant wasn't empty, but the energy was wrong. It lacked the warmth, the chatter, the hum of a place people felt at home. His pizza arrived, and his stomach turned the second he saw it. The cheese had congealed. The crust looked limp. Carter's Pizza had never looked like this. A group of construction workers entered, their boots thudding against the tile. Deshawn recognized them regulars who always ordered the meat lover special after their shifts. He listened as they approached the counter. 2 meat lovers and a large soda, one of them said. Lisa, the second cashier, wrote it down. Not on Jason's notepad. A different one. Deshawn watched, his stomach twisting. Man, remember how good this place used to be, one of the workers muttered. Yeah, what the hell happened? Deshawn had to look away, his fingers clenching around his cold, disappointing slice. He had inherited his grandfather's recipe book, filled with handwritten notes in the margins, small details passed down over decades. Every morning, he still made the sauce himself. This wasn't his pizza. This wasn't his restaurant. And then, the moment that made his blood run cold. A young mother approached the counter, her face flushed with frustration. She set a pizza box down with a force that made the napkin dispenser rattle. This is the 3rd time this week my delivery order has been wrong, she snapped. I ordered a plain cheese pizza for my kid's birthday party. This is covered in jalapenos and hot sauce. Lisa didn't miss a beat. I'm so sorry, Mom. Our delivery system has been having issues lately. Would you like a refund? I want to speak to the owner. Jason cut in quickly. Mr. Carter's away on business. He's been dealing with some personal issues. Deshawn's chest tightened. I haven't gone anywhere. The woman scoffed, grabbing her refund and storming out. And that's when Deshawn heard it. Lisa leaned toward Jason, voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper. It's almost too easy, she chuckled. He still thinks people just don't like his pizza anymore. Deshawn felt his heartbeat pound in his ears. He reached for his phone, his fingers trembling as he opened the voice recorder app and hit record. Something was very wrong at Carter's Original Pizza. And it wasn't just bad service. It wasn't just cold food. It was a conspiracy. And somehow, he knew this was just the tip of the iceberg. Deshawn forced himself to take another bite of the pizza, chewing slowly as his stomach churned. The cheese had already hardened into a rubbery layer. The sauce was bland, almost chemical in taste, and the crust, his family's signature, perfected over 3 generations, was soggy, like it had been left under a heat lamp for hours. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. His grip tightened around the crust, fingers pressing into the dough until it collapsed in his palm. He set it down, forced himself to breathe. Not yet. He needed to watch, to listen. At the counter, Jason and Lisa moved with a quiet efficiency that made his skin crawl. Their exchanges were quick, coded. 2 notepads, 2 sets of records. One for real transactions, one for what? Under-the-table sales. A cash skimming operation. He didn't know how deep this ran, but he knew it wasn't small. The door chimed as another customer walked in, a teenage boy wearing a hoodie, earbuds in, barely glancing up as he approached the counter. Regular customers would know that Carter's didn't do single-slice orders after 2 p.m., but Jason didn't even hesitate. 1 cheese slice, the kid muttered, sliding a $10 bill across the counter. Jason didn't enter the sale. He palmed the bill with a quick flick of his wrist, dropping it beneath the register, then scribbled something on his notepad. Deshawn felt a pulse of anger tighten in his throat. The customer took his slice and walked out. No receipt, no record. Jason turned back to Lisa, smirking. That's 20 so far today, he murmured. Lisa chuckled, shaking her head. Dumbass doesn't even check the books. We could be taking half the till and he wouldn't notice. Deshawn gritted his teeth. He had been checking the books. But if the sales weren't even being entered in the first place? His pulse hammered in his ears. He had trusted these people. The next customer was a middle-aged woman, one of his old regulars. He recognized her immediately, Miss Lorraine. She used to come in every Sunday after church, always ordered a small Supreme, always left a generous tip. She hesitated near the counter, glancing toward the menu, then back at Lisa. Hey, sweetheart, tell me something, she said, voice careful. Why all still use that same sauce? The one Mr. Carter's daddy used to make. Deshawn leaned forward slightly, waiting. Lisa's smile never faltered. Of course, Mom. Same as always. Lies. Miss Lorraine pressed her lips together, staring at Lisa for a long second before nodding. All right then. Let me get a small supreme, extra mushrooms. Lisa rang up the order. Into the POS. Deshawn felt a sharp contrast between how she handled different customers. The skimming wasn't for everyone, just cash payments. Just people who wouldn't ask for receipts. The patterns were starting to form. 10 minutes, Lisa said. We'll bring it out to you. Miss Lorraine paid in card, took her number, and walked toward a table near the window. She didn't look satisfied. Deshawn didn't blame her. The lunch rush was creeping in. More customers, more fake orders, more money disappearing. And then, another moment that made his blood boil. A man in a navy blue suit walked in, a little too polished, a little too sure of himself. He didn't belong here. He carried himself like a corporate executive walking into a fast food joint, pretending to blend in. Lisa's demeanor changed immediately. She straightened, smoothed her hands over her apron, then leaned over the counter, lowering her voice. Didn't expect to see you here. The man glanced around before responding, his voice quiet but firm. Dylan says it's not moving fast enough. Lisa tensed. It's only been a few months. And he says Carter's too stubborn. If he's not selling, we have to push harder. Deshawn went rigid. Dylan Briggs. 8 months ago, Deshawn had fired him for stealing from the register. It had started small, a missing 20 here, a miscounted drawer there. Deshawn had given him warnings, second chances. Dylan had repaid him by skimming hundreds. When Deshawn had confronted him, Dylan had snapped. He had stood in the middle of the kitchen, his face twisted with resentment, fury. People like you don't deserve to run places like this. People like me? Deshawn had asked coldly. Dylan had laughed, shaking his head. Man, you really think you built this? You think people come here cause of you? It's the name. The nostalgia. That's it. You're just lucky. Deshawn had fired him on the spot. And now, here he was again. Sabotaging his restaurant, trying to bleed him out. The man in the suit shifted, lowering his voice even further. Health department scheduled for next week. It's time for phase 2. Lisa hesitated. Isn't that risky? Not if they find what we tell them to find. Deshawn's fingers curled into fists beneath the table. They weren't just skimming money. They weren't just serving bad food. They were setting him up. They were going to ruin him. Lisa exhaled, then nodded. All right, we'll be ready. The man slid her a small envelope. Cash bonus. Keep him distracted. Deshawn's stomach twisted in disgust. The man turned to leave, and as he passed Deshawn's table, their eyes met for half a second. Deshawn forced himself to look away. Not yet. Not yet. The door chimed as the man disappeared onto the street. Deshawn's mind was racing. Health inspection, fake violations, forced closure. He had seen it before. A business doesn't just fail overnight. It's killed. And right now, his was next. His phone was still recording. But he needed more. Because if Dylan Briggs thought he could take Carter's original pizza away from him, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. Deshawn sat frozen in his booth, heart pounding beneath the weight of what he had just overheard. His mind raced, piecing together the puzzle, the skimming, the bad food, the fake complaints, and now a health inspection set up to bury him. This wasn't just about money. This was a calculated takedown. And Dylan Briggs, that entitled, thieving son of a bitch, was behind it all. The thought made his fingers curl into a fist against the table. Dylan had always resented him, always sneered at the idea that a black man could own something great, something built with his own hands. And now Dylan had found a way to exact his revenge, partnering with corporate sharks who didn't care about the Carter name, about the history, about the generations of hard work poured into every pizza that came out of that oven. They saw prime real estate. He saw his family's legacy. Deshawn forced himself to exhale, to steady his hands. He wasn't going to explode, not here, not now. He needed to keep watching, to listen. At the counter, Lisa stuffed the envelope into her apron, eyes darting toward Jason. You hear that? Phase 2. We need to step it up. Jason smirked, flipping a rag over his shoulder. Guess that means more customer complaints, huh? Lisa scoffed. More like making sure we get some real violations. Dylan says Carter's too damn stubborn. He's not selling fast enough. Deshawn's pulse slammed against his skull. Not selling fast enough. These motherfuckers weren't just bleeding him out, they were trying to bury him alive. Jason chuckled, leaning in closer. I mean, look at this place. It's outdated as hell. That dumbass still makes the sauce himself. Like it's the 1950s or some shit. Nobody gives a damn about tradition. They want convenience. Fast food, chain restaurants. This place. It's a museum. Deshawn ground his teeth. He had spent his whole life hearing this bullshit. You sure a place like this is right for you? You ever think about franchising? Get some real expertise in here. It's just food, man. No need to get sentimental about it. They never understood. They never would. Lisa leaned against the counter, voice dropping. So how do we push harder? Jason tapped his fingers on the register, thinking. Health violations. Expired ingredients. Maybe some sanitation issues in the kitchen. And if that doesn't work, he smirked, pulling something small from his pocket and tossing it in the air. A vial. Deshawn's stomach turned. Lisa frowned. That the modifier? Jason nodded. Few drops in the sauce. The dough flattens the flavor. Makes everything taste like cardboard. Customers keep leaving bad reviews, stop coming in, and boom, Carter's dead in the water. Deshawn gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles went white. This wasn't sabotage. This was poisoning. They were destroying his family's food on purpose. The door chime rang again, and Deshawn's breath caught as Camille walked in. His head chef, his most loyal employee. And she wasn't even scheduled to work today. Her face was carefully neutral as she approached the counter, setting her purse down as she gave Jason and Lisa a look. I need to check something in the kitchen. Jason's posture stiffened. Health inspectors coming soon, he said quickly. Better not have any unauthorized personnel back there. Camille's expression didn't change. Since when do you care about health regulations? Lisa shifted. We're just trying to keep things in order. Deshawn saw the flicker of suspicion in Camille's face. She had already been questioning the changes in supply orders, the off-brand ingredients that had started showing up without her approval. Jason's hand drifted toward his pocket, the pocket with the vial, and Camille's eyes followed the movement. Deshawn's stomach clenched. For a second, he thought she was going to call their bluff, demand to go into the kitchen anyway. But then she did something he didn't expect. She nodded. Slowly. You know what? Never mind. I'll come back later. Lisa relaxed. Jason smirked. Good call. Camille turned and walked back out the door, but as she passed the window, Deshawn saw the truth. In her hand, tucked against her side, was a small camera, and the second she stepped outside, she pulled out her phone and started dialing. Jason and Lisa didn't notice. They were too busy plotting. Lisa crossed her arms. Think she suspects? Jason shrugged. Doesn't matter. By next week, this place will be drowning in health code violations. He smirked. After that? Carter will be lucky if he can sell this place for enough to cover his loans. Lisa's eyes glinted. And Dylan's buyer is still ready. Jason grinned. Some big chain. They're going to tear this place down, put up something modern, franchise it. Dylan gets his cut. We get our bonuses. And Carter. He let out a short, cruel laugh. He gets to watch his precious family legacy turn into another cookie-cutter burger joint. Deshawn couldn't breathe. Every goddamn thing was a setup. They weren't just running him into the ground. They weren't just ruining his name. They were going to erase him. The dough, the blend of cheese, the secret techniques passed down through generations, all of it would be gone. They were going to wipe him out and replace his family's name with neon signs and corporate menace. And the worst part, they thought he was too stupid to fight back. They thought he was just another black man who got lucky, riding on nostalgia, doomed to fail. They thought he'd roll over, take the loss, disappear. Deshawn pressed his hands flat against the table, forcing himself to calm the storm in his chest. His phone was still recording, picking up every word. But he wasn't done yet. He needed more. Jason and Lisa thought they were just helping Dylan get revenge. Dylan thought he was in control, orchestrating the whole thing. And Riverton. They thought they were the real masterminds, pulling strings from the shadows. Everyone in this scheme was operating on different levels of information. And that was their weakness. Because none of them knew who they were really dealing with. Deshaun Carter wasn't a man who let his family's name be dragged through the mud. He wasn't a man who watched his people's hard work be taken from them. And if Dylan Briggs thought this war was already won, then he was about to learn exactly what it felt like to lose everything. Deshaun didn't leave right away. He sat there, hands steady, mind burning through every piece of information he had just gathered. Jason and Lisa were small fish, just foot soldiers. Dylan was playing them, thinking he was in control. But Riverton, they were the real threat. They wanted him gone, and they weren't playing fair. They were setting him up for a fall that no small business owner could recover from. Health violations, bad reviews, ruined reputation, a forced sale. It was the blueprint for corporate takeovers across America. He had seen it happen to others. Now it was happening to him. But they had made a mistake. They thought he was already beaten. Deshaun slid out of the booth, forcing himself to move slow, to act casual. He tossed his half-eaten pizza slice into the trash and walked toward the door. His heart pounded, but his body language stayed loose. If they suspected him, if they caught even a whiff of doubt, he'd lose his advantage. The bell above the door chimed as he stepped onto the street. Sunlight hit his face, but all he felt was the heat of rage simmering beneath his skin. He had to fight the urge to turn back around, to call out Dylan's name, to put his fist through the goddamn counter. No, not yet. He spotted Camille down the block, standing near her car, phone to her ear. He made a beeline toward her, the world around him blurring. She looked up as he approached, her expression tight. "Heard everything?" she asked, voice sharp. Deshaun nodded once, every word. Camille exhaled, shoving her phone into her pocket. "They're playing dirty. This is bigger than Dylan. This is real money moving behind the scenes. You ready for this?" Deshaun looked past her, down the street where Carter's had stood for over 40 years, where his grandfather had rolled out dough by hand, where his father had taught him how to balance the seasoning in the sauce by smell alone. His name was on that building. His blood was in those walls. "Yeah," he said. "I'm ready." Camille nodded, pulling something from her jacket pocket. A small USB drive. "I've been tracking the supply changes," she said. "I knew something was off when our flour shipments changed without notice. I've got invoices, supplier names, everything. They've been sneaking in low-quality ingredients and hiking up the costs. And guess who's been approving it?" Deshaun already knew the answer. Tyler. "Yeah, but here's the kicker, those suppliers. They're owned by shell companies tied to Riverton Holdings. It's a whole damn loop. They're inflating our costs on purpose, making the books look bad, and blaming it on you." Deshaun felt something sharp and cold settle in his chest. They weren't just taking his customers. They weren't just ruining his name. They were setting him up to fail on paper, too. The kind of failure that looked legitimate. The kind that left men like him drowning in debt, with no way out. He took the USB from Camille, gripping it tight. "This is enough to prove fraud." She nodded. "Yeah, but we need more. Something that ties Dylan to the bigger plan. Right now, he's just the attack dog. We need to find out who's holding the leash." Deshaun's mind was already spinning. Dylan was too cocky. He had always been too desperate to prove himself. He wanted power, but he wasn't patient. He would have left a trail. And if Deshaun knew anything about men like Dylan Briggs, it was that they always had a weak spot. Camille crossed her arms. "So what's next?" Deshaun clenched his jaw. "We set a trap." She smirked. "Oh, I like the sound of that." Deshaun looked back toward Carter's, the weight of everything pressing against his ribs. He had one shot at this. One chance to take back what was his, to shut Dylan down, to make Riverton regret ever thinking they could take him down like he was just some nobody. His father had once told him, "You don't fight fair with men who play dirty. You fight smart. You fight to win." And Deshaun Carter. He wasn't just fighting to win. He was fighting to make them pay. Deshawn didn't sleep that night. He sat in his office, lights dimmed, the USB Camille had given him plugged into his laptop. The invoices were damning. Supplier names he didn't recognize. Inflated costs, orders placed without his approval. Tyler's signature on every single one. But it wasn't enough. He needed Dylan. He needed something bigger. Something that tied all of this to Riverton in a way that no corporate lawyer could bury. At 2 a.m. Camille texted him. Camille, Dylan's at the Grove. Drinking. Running his mouth. Deshawn didn't hesitate. He grabbed his keys, slipped the USB into his pocket, and walked out into the night. The Grove was a dive bar on the south side, the kind of place where deals got made in dark corners and men like Dylan felt important. Deshawn didn't belong here, not tonight, not looking like a man who had everything to lose. He left his car 2 blocks away, swapped his leather jacket for an old hoodie, pulled his baseball cap low, and stepped inside. The place reeked of cheap whiskey and desperation. Neon beer signs flickered against wood-paneled walls. A jukebox played something old, something slow. And there, at the bar, was Dylan Briggs. Slumped over his drink, talking too loud, too confident. The kind of drunk that made men reckless. Deshawn moved toward a stool 2 seats down, ordered a beer he wouldn't drink. He kept his eyes on the mirror behind the bar, watching Dylan's reflection as he laughed, gestured, bragged. I'm telling you, man, Carter's is done. 1 more week, maybe less. Dylan grinned, tapping his glass against the counter. Idiot still doesn't know what hit him. Whole place is rotten. Bad reviews, bad food, health violations, you name it. Just wait till next Friday. The man beside him, slick suit, expensive watch, didn't belong here either. He leaned in. And you're sure it's happening next week? Dylan scoffed. I signed the fucking paperwork myself. He took another sip, then laughed. Riverton's got it all lined up. They grease the right wheels, the health department shuts Carter down, and boom, deal closes within the month. Deshawn's grip on the beer bottle tightened. And Carter? The man asked. Dylan rolled his eyes. What about him? He laughed. He's a relic. Acts like he's some big-shot businessman when he's just some dude who got lucky with an old family recipe. Riverton's gonna put a real restaurant there. A place with a brand. A place people actually want to eat at. The man nodded, pleased. Good. If this works out, there's more where that came from. He slid an envelope across the bar. Dylan took it without hesitation. Deshawn didn't move. His blood ran hot, violent. He wanted to put Dylan through the goddamn floor, make him choke on every word, every stolen dollar, every ounce of smug entitlement he wore like a second skin. But not yet. Not like this. He pulled his phone from his pocket, thumbed open the recorder app. His voice was steady, controlled. Hey, Camille. The sound of the bar buzzed behind him, a perfect backdrop. Yeah, I just left Carter's. Looking over the books again. Can't figure out where all this missing money's going. Can't figure out why the health department suddenly has us flagged either. Real mystery. He watched Dylan stiffen. Maybe I should call the city, Deshawn continued, voice casual. Hell, maybe I should call the FBI. See if they're interested in how a local health inspector suddenly got a 6-figure deposit in their bank account. Dylan's drink froze halfway to his mouth. Or maybe I should call my lawyer first. Have him pull every supplier invoice, every contract, every bank statement. Wonder what we'd find. The color drained from Dylan's face. Deshawn took a slow sip of his beer. Dylan, think that's a good idea. For a moment's silence. Then Dylan snapped. You motherfucker. He shoved his stool back, nearly toppling over as he staggered to his feet. Deshawn barely flinched. The entire bar was watching now. That's real funny, Carter, Dylan sneered, but there was panic in his eyes. You think you're gonna pull that legal bullshit on me? You think I don't got protection? You're a dead man. You hear me? He jabbed a finger in Deshawn's direction. Carter's is done. Riverton's got the papers signed. The inspectors are coming Friday. You're finished. You. Dylan. The man in the suit stood slowly. Dylan blinked. Realization hit him too late. Deshawn smiled, slow and sharp. Thanks for the confirmation. He turned his phone toward Dylan. The screen was still recording. Dylan's mouth opened, then closed. The suited man took a step back. "I don't know him," he muttered, already heading for the door. This conversation never happened. Dylan whirled on him. Wait, but the man was gone. The bartender leaned forward. "You're gonna pay your tab before you get arrested, or after." Dylan looked around, realization sinking in. Deshawn rose from his seat, calm, solid, unshaken. "You never understood, did you?" He adjusted his jacket, slipping his phone into his pocket. "This isn't just a business to me. This is my family. My father built this. His father before him. And you." He looked Dylan up and down, disgust curling in his chest. "You're just a thief." Dylan's hands shook. His mouth opened like he wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to say. Deshawn smiled. "See you Friday." And then he walked out. Because the game was over. And Deshawn Carter, he had already won. Friday came faster than expected. Deshawn stood in his office, staring at the clock on the wall. 10:57 a.m., 3 minutes. The air was thick, charged with something electric. Outside, Carter's was buzzing not with customers, but with tension. The health inspectors were due any minute. The press was already outside, and Dylan was running out of time. Deshawn straightened his tie, smoothing a wrinkle that wasn't there. Camille stood near the door, arms crossed, watching him carefully. "You ready for this?" she asked. He exhaled slowly. "I was born ready. It was time." Deshawn stepped out of his office, moving through the dining area with measured purpose. Jason and Lisa were behind the counter, fidgeting, looking everywhere except at him. They knew. They could feel it. And then the door swung open. 2 city health inspectors walked in, clipboards in hand. Behind them, a man in a gray suit. Not a health official. Riverton. Deshawn smiled. "Mr. Carter," one of the inspectors greeted, his tone too neutral, too rehearsed. "We're here for a routine health and safety inspection." "Routine?" Deshawn echoed, tilting his head. "Seems a little sudden." The Riverton rep cleared his throat. "We were made aware of some troubling reports regarding your establishment. We're just following protocol." Deshawn chuckled. "Troubling reports?" He looked at Jason, then Lisa. "Like what?" Silence. The inspectors exchanged a glance. Deshawn folded his arms. "Well, by all means, gentlemen. Inspect away." One of the inspectors nodded, moving toward the kitchen. The other followed, already writing something down. The Riverton man hovered near the door, checking his phone. Deshawn leaned in, lowering his voice, waiting for a text from Dylan. The man flinched. Deshawn's smile sharpened. "Won't be coming. He's a little indisposed." Right on cue, the door slammed open again. This time it wasn't inspectors. It was 2 men in dark suits, crisp, professional, moving with practiced authority. FBI. The restaurant went still. Lisa's breath hitched. Jason took a half step back, eyes wide. "Deshawn Carter," one of the agents said. "That's me," Deshawn replied smoothly. The agent nodded. "We'd like to speak with you outside." Deshawn arched a brow. "About?" The agent glanced toward the Riverton man, who had suddenly gone pale. "About ongoing corporate fraud and corruption involving Riverton Holdings. Specifically, an orchestrated attempt to sabotage multiple small businesses through falsified health violations and financial fraud. You wouldn't happen to have any knowledge of that, would you?" The Riverton man's phone buzzed in his hand. He glanced down, and Deshawn could see it on his face. The moment he realized he was fucked. Because the text wasn't from Dylan. It was about Dylan. Deshawn leaned in. "Dylan got arrested an hour ago. He's already talking. And guess what? You're next." The man whipped around, making for the door. "Stop him." The agents were on him before he made it 2 steps. Lisa gasped. Jason went rigid. Deshawn turned to them slowly. "You know, I really don't like liars." His voice was calm, too calm. He gestured toward the agents. "They don't either." Lisa cracked first. We didn't It wasn't." Jason collapsed onto a stool, head in his hands. Deshawn shook his head. "You had a choice." Lisa looked like she wanted to run. Jason just looked broken. Outside, the commotion grew. Reporters. Cameras flashing. The fall of Riverton had begun. Deshawn didn't care. He turned away from the wreckage, heading back toward the kitchen, toward his people, his business, his future. Camille followed, her smirk sharp. So, she said. Now what? Deshawn exhaled. The fight was over. But the rebuilding, that was just beginning. Now. He smiled, stretching his shoulders. Now we get back to work. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.